Friends, we are edging towards collapse. And what do I mean by that? I mean very simply that we just keep playing this Jenga game until the whole thing is going to come collapsing down. Just like in the game Jenga, you keep pulling little blocks out of the bottom until it becomes so unstable that it has to collapse. Sooner or later, it has to collapse. And friends, that's how the Western civilization is functioning right now. We have people sitting there pushing blocks out one after the next until the whole system has become so unstable, the whole thing is wobbling back and forth, and yet we're surrounded by people who are like, gee, there's nothing wrong with the system. The system can't break. And yet I'm going to walk you through a number of issues where it's people just keep pushing things further and further until these systems are going to break. And when these systems break, when we talk about the power grid failing, when we talk about the massive demographic shifts, when we start talking about just some of these examples that are just so outrageous that it's so clear that this is a terrible idea, and yet people are like, oh, well, I can see how it's a terrible idea, but it's really not going to be bad. We can just mitigate this somehow. We're going to talk about these things, these stories, and they're just coming out right now, and walk you through some of the insane things that we're facing right now, because hopefully you guys are getting stocked up. Hopefully you guys are getting prepared for what's coming, because it's going to be a doozy. And you say, which thing is it going to be, Steve? I don't know. We've destabilized our society so much under this crazy belief that nothing could ever go wrong. Like, I mean, things go wrong, but nothing could ever, like, really go wrong. The system always fixes itself. That is a mistaken belief, and it leads people to doing stupid stuff that will inevitably break the system. All right, let's start off with a story, an interesting story coming out of California. Now, this isn't a news story. This is a slow-moving train wreck. Some morons out in California were like, hey, let's reintroduce wolves. Because I haven't seen enough fairy tales or any of the nursery rhymes to understand how that's a bad idea. So they wanted to reintroduce wolves. Well, if they want to reintroduce wolves, there's a problem. There's a reason why the wolves disappeared years ago. The farmers took care of them. So in order to reintroduce them, they had to protect the wolves. So they decided to put a massive penalty and a criminal charge against killing or harassing these wolves. If you kill a wolf in California, you're facing a $100,000 fine, which is devastating, but might actually be worth it. Or, well, sorry, 1 year in prison. You could go to the UK and assault a minor and get less than that. Anyway, this is crazy. I mean, you have California putting harsh criminal penalties as if you're a violent criminal for offing a wolf that may be harassing your flock or your herd. And that's exactly what is happening. In California, as these wolves are reproducing, they're teaching their young not to go after elk, not to go after wild game, because you know where you can get a great meal and you don't even have to run? You just go down into this farm over here and eat their cattle. Go after the calves, which is a big problem for farmers. These farmers are trying to raise a herd on their ranch, and these wolves are coming down and attacking the calves. How do you protect them against that? Well, you can't shoot the wolves. You can't harass the wolves. So what do? Well, the government has an answer for that. They had this little fund, and I do mean little, funded it with $3 million and said basically this will cover the farmers' expenses for the wolves maybe impacting their flocks. Well, let's just say after they instituted it, it was just a few months later that the fund was just completely dry. And Each year, it's gotten worse and worse and worse, and they're not refunding or refilling the fund. The fund just sits there empty. It's like, yeah, well, we have a fund for that, just we don't have any money in it. We haven't had money in it for years. The average payout for damage to cattle was $2,800 per head. And those are the lucky farmers that actually got anything. We're seeing close to $10 million in just what has been documented of damages. They had a $3 million fund, and a bunch of that got spent on prevention. Now you can't spend that on prevention, you just get direct damages, if you're lucky enough to get anything at all. $2,800 for a head of cattle? If you're like, that's really low. Well, it's a government payout, insurance policy from the government, and they don't really want to pay out. So the farmers are having a massive problem. They don't know what to do. Each wolf, they actually did a study on this. They probably paid millions of dollars for the study, but if they actually paid money for farmers who are actually losing their herds, no, they wouldn't do that. They just want to fund the studies by academics and everything like that. Each wolf creates approximately $69,000 to $162,000 worth of damage. Each wolf causes on the upper side up to almost $200,000 worth of damage for each wolf. So you thought it was expensive having unpapered people in the United States. Well, these wolves are actually more expensive than them. I know it's surprising, but yet that's the truth. This is just one example of everyone who takes like 15 seconds to consider, should we reintroduce wolves in ranchers' territory, where there are calves and cows, and I think everyone would go, that's probably not a good idea. It's not going to be cost effective. It's going to cost the farmers a whole lot of money. The government's probably going to have to pay out a bunch of money, and this is going to be overall bad for the economy. But don't let economic sense stop a fun green project out there. We're seeing a massive transformation in the demographics of Europe. I was just talking to an Indian who is living in the UK, Indian background person who's living in the UK now, and he was complaining about what's happening in the UK. Very disturbed, very troubled. He started a church, and some of the other people he knows there have started churches in the UK because people in the UK don't go to church anymore. All the churches there have been transformed into pubs, wedding establishments, though not many people are getting married anymore over there either. And honestly, the biggest purchaser of churches nowadays are actually the Muslims, because the Muslims are buying churches and turning them into mosques. And that's a big thing that's happening over there. And he was just talking about how in the United Kingdom, the young people just literally have no room in their lives, no understanding for religion or room in their lives for God. And it's a tremendously bad situation. But he was also complaining about just how many Muslims were coming into the country and how there's been so many, and they group together and then they win elections and then they change the laws. So the laws reflect the places that they fled from. This is a situation that has been going on for years, which is why people have started referring to London as Londonstan. They actually have a Muslim mayor because there's enough Muslims in the city that they have basically started just winning elections outright, and they are imposing light Sharia law in London, and they're allowing knife attackers to go free. It's It's absolutely devastating what's happening over there in the UK. But let's go over to Austria, not Australia, Austria. In Austria, 1/3 of their primary school students now across the entire country are non-German speakers. So you'd think that if people came to Austria and wanted to integrate in any way, shape, or form, they'd teach their kids German, right? Or have them learn it. But 1/3 of all their primary school students don't speak German. That's kind of a thing there. I mean, can you imagine, across the United States, 1/3 of primary school students don't speak English? But the United States is a mixing pot, so that's not as crazy because you know that'd be Spanish. But in Germany, in Austria, it's not even like a language, it's so many languages. What do you even do in that type of situation? Last year, there were 500,000 criminal acts in Austria. Half of them were committed by non-Austrians. Is it bad? Yeah, it's bad. And you just go country by country by country. The problem is getting accurate statistics from these countries, because most of these countries just hide all the data. They just refuse to report on it. They don't want you to know what's going on. So every so often you get a little gleam when some government, like the Austrians, actually publish some of this information. The UK hides its information. France hides its information. You go down the list and it's just one country after the next being so politically correct that they can't even acknowledge who is actually doing the stabbings. Yeah. The United States has a problem with boomstick violence, but Europe just replaced the boomstick violence with stabby violence. And here's the thing. If you're a woman, a smaller woman, and all you can carry is a knife, and your attacker has a knife, and they're a big guy, who's going to win that altercation? Who's going to win that fight? Well, I think we could say with fair certainty that 90-95% of the time the big guy is going to win. Now, if you're allowed to have boomsticks and there's a smaller woman and she has a boomstick and the attacker, big guy, has a boomstick, what are the chances that the big attacker is going to win? Well, let's just say it's a lot less than 95 to 90%. It's a lot lower. That woman has a much better chance of defending herself. Does that make a difference? Yes, it does. If you're a smaller build woman or a older person, an elderly person in a dangerous neighborhood, a boomstick levels the playing field like nothing else. But governments around the world are like, no, you can't defend yourself. You just have to kind of hope the police show up. Hope. That's your best defense in those countries. And then we start looking at the power grids. We've talked about the wind and solar generation issues. We've talked about how the phase of the grid is problematic. With the solar panels, they have to induce so you have, with the main generators, you have a mechanical phase generated, right? You have spinning generators, which have mass, whereas solar doesn't have a spinning generator. So if it gets slightly out of phase, it really starts to damage the power and basically creates a giant short circuit on the grid. And if it's just slightly out of phase, it actually doesn't self-correct. What it does is it actually damages the power generation of the entire grid. So we've talked a little bit about that kind of stuff. That's a bit technical, but it is a problem. Whereas when you have spinning generators, the generators can slow down or speed up just a fraction of a second and that kind of helps to make all of the generators across the grid kind of sing in harmony, so to speak. Whereas when you have these phony digital modulators and phase converters, I mean that doesn't work as well. You still need much of the grid to be spinning generator mass, holding it steady. But they just keep throwing more and more solar panels on the grid. In the United States, is 3 grids: Texas, East Coast Interconnect, and West Coast Interconnect. And then you have in Europe, the different countries, they just keep putting more and more solar panels out there. And while the solar panels can be great if offset by and supplementing good energy generation, if you have natural gas with solar, that works. The natural gas can ramp down and refill its tanks during the day while the solar is producing, and then you can use the natural gas in the evening time. That makes sense. Hydroelectric, if you have a large body of water behind the dam, and you really do have the option of running it full tilt, like in the evening time when it's needed, and ramp up the water expenditures at certain times of the day, that can be great, but it really does cause problems downstream for you to be alternating the flow of water through a dam. So you really don't have all that many options there. Slow reacting coal, you can ramp up a coal-fired power plant in a matter of an hour or less. But the nice thing about natural gas generators is that they can be almost instantaneous. Not quite instantaneous, but close to instantaneous. You see that you have a sudden drop off of solar because of an eclipse. You can ramp up that natural gas generation real fast. But the problem is they're closing a lot of these plants, and they're turning to natural gas as a baseline. This is just to keep the grid going. They're not the emergency backups anymore. They're being used more heavily because there just aren't enough power plants to go around. We just keep destabilizing the power grid more and more and more because, once again, people say nothing bad has ever happened like this before, so therefore it's impossible. It can't happen. We have all this margin. We're so smart. We can make it work. And so they're trying to make it work. They think they're so smart. And we saw what happened a few years back in Texas when things just went sideways. The windmills stopped producing electricity, and the solar panels all got snow on them, and let's just say didn't produce much power at all. And then some of the emergency backup generators, like the natural gas, started having issues with their coolant. Their cooling lines froze. And suddenly they had a catastrophic failure of their power grid. Friends, this is where we're moving towards. Did Texas learn their lesson? Well, a little bit, but then you still see them adding more and more wind and solar still to their electricity grid because somebody thinks that that's a great idea. And they say, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Those people, when catastrophe strikes, are going to be saying the same words we've heard so often from Wall Street. Who could have known? Well, people like me and people who have a brain could have known. All right, friends, they're playing Jenga with our society, collapse in so many different respects. We're not even talking about national debt. We're not even talking about just the political crisis in the United States and other countries. There's so many different ways in which things are getting worse and worse and just moving towards closer to the cliff where we could fall off. All right, friends, let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from his channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.